Okay, and good morning, everybody. I see people are starting to arrive here, so I wanted to just come over, welcome you. The program is going to start in about in 2 minutes, and my special guest today is Kevin Adler, who's the CEO of this incredible nonprofit called Miracle Messages. So look forward to introducing you to him here shortly. Just want to invite you all. This is, of course, the 60-minute long program. We're doing this while the pandemic is here, and we just have a lot of fun with these programs. We've got a special guest each week, and we're going to talk to Kevin about his program for the homeless. He's based in San Francisco, but his programs operate all over the United States. And then we're going to be bringing you in, as we always do. So if you've got questions or comments, things relating to Kevin's work, or things that you want to share, just about your conscious journey, planetary awakening, thoughts that you have in your household right now with this pandemic going on, invite you to come in and share. And we're going to also invite people that are going through our master classes right now to come in and share as well. And we've got a whole bunch of master classes that are in progress right now. So if you're one of those and you've got a question you want to bring in, feel free to do that. So we're going to start in about a minute and invite you to just put your feet up, grab yourself some water, tea, kombucha, whatever your favorite beverage is. It's gorgeous here. And there's Kevin. Hey, Kevin, welcome to you, brother. We're actually just a few seconds early. We're going to formally start in a minute. And I'm going to just do a quick intro, and then I'll formally introduce you, Kevin. And then we're going to jump right in to talk about your fabulous nonprofit and your programs and our brothers and sisters on the street. You know, I'm really looking forward to hearing.
Thanks for having me, Steve. It's really, I appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Good to see you too.
You too. You too. Really good to see you, Kevin. So, so welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us. And of course, this is Humanity's Team. We're a 17-year-old 501c3 nonprofit based in the United States. But half of our demographic is here in the United States, and the other half is outside of the country. So wherever you are, welcome, and thank you for joining us. And of course, we're devoted to supporting you on your conscious journey. We also are supporting planetary awakening and creating flourishing at every level of life, in our own life, in our homes, in our communities, and out in the world. So a shout out here to all of the people that are present. These are normally, we do a monthly, we're now doing them weekly with the pandemic. And we do them monthly, usually for our community circle members that have access to all of the audios and videos from years ago. But we've opened this up to our whole community because a lot of people are sequestered in their homes and there are challenges going on. So we want to just invite you, all of you present, to have fun with us here during the hour. We're going to get into a great conversation with my special guest, Kevin Adler, who I'm going to introduce in just 1 second. And then, as we always do, we're going to be bringing you in with your comments and questions and just things that you want to share here with us during the hour. So now, as I shout out, I mentioned community circle members, but people that are with the Awe and Wonder program, Conscious Leadership program, the Technology, Consciousness, and Evolution program, the Healing the Press program, the Science of Self-Empowerment program, our Humanities Team Leadership group, and then all of you that are viewers, that are part of what we call teammates, people that we're connected to, friends that are located all over the world. Let me give now my special guest an introduction, a formal introduction. I just love Kevin Adler. He's such an amazing guy. He's the founder and the CEO of Miracle Messages, and it's an award-winning nonprofit organization that helps people experiencing homelessness rebuild their social support systems through family reunification and a virtual buddy system. Miracle Messages seeks to connect the homeless all over the world with their families and friends. And to date, Miracle Messages has facilitated, just by their count, and it could be more, over 375 reunions and new friendships. So huge congratulations, Kevin, for the great work you're doing. And Kevin is one of the things I love so many things about Kevin, his incredible organization, but he has a fantastic education, and he was a technology entrepreneur. And before he hit his payday, he left for Miracle Messages and do this incredible work. So Kevin, welcome. And it's so great to have you with
us. A man from maybe two peas in a pod here, Steve, right? It seems like we've had some similar paths and kind of realizations in our own professional lives on what matters. And hey, one time, not only all those accolades, but a one-time house guest at your house, right?
That's right here in Boulder. That was
fun.
That was fun. And as we were leaving our dinner on Pearl Street in Boulder, there were a lot of homeless people in Boulder, and we were passing a group, and Kevin stopped and just kind of started talking to these people about his organization and reuniting them with family. It was such a beautiful thing to see. It wasn't anything we'd planned. It was just part of our dinner that night. It was amazing. Yeah, so Kevin, let's just jump right in here. We can just, if you want, start at the top. Probably a lot of people that are here aren't familiar with Miracle Messages. So just the nonprofit you formed and the good work that you're doing, maybe just to kind of get us started.
Yeah, so thanks, Steve, for having me, and then the entire team that makes this possible. I appreciate you having me on. Miracle Messages really just started not as a nonprofit, not as an organization, not even as an idea, but simply as a question, which was, how might we engage with our neighbors experiencing homelessness and help them tell their stories with the same storytelling tools that we use and almost take for granted? Smartphones, social media, wearable cameras. I had an uncle who was homeless for about 30 years, and he suffered from schizophrenia, lived on and off the street. And so after he died, I was sitting at the gravesite with my dad, having a really heart-to-heart conversation on his younger brother, Mark, my uncle Mark. And sitting there, I heard all these beautiful stories and why, he even said we need to have a gravesite for this restless man who never had a, resting place on earth while he was alive, to have a place we could commemorate him. And I thought, that's such a beautiful gesture, but it doesn't tell me anything else about who this man was and how he saw the world, and, guest of honor at Thanksgiving, remembered every birthday. We'd always talk about super burritos. We had a shared love of super burritos, right? So just these things that make a person a person. We're all subsumed in the dash between birth and death. And I said, how can we open up that life so people know him more than just a homeless man? Because I never knew him as a homeless man. And so I started over the course of a year inviting 24 people experiencing homelessness to wear GoPro cameras around their chests and narrate their experiences on what life is like on the streets. And, I'm a person of faith. We've talked a lot about, shared faith values. And I asked this question, like, how would Jesus use a smartphone? How would Jesus use a GoPro camera? How would, social media? How could we use these tools in a more empathetic way of solidarity, a oneness way that we're show solidarity with our neighbors? And I got the footage back after, a year, and I was watching these videos of people literally who are homeless narrate their life of what life is like. And over again, I heard people say, I never realized I was homeless when I lost my housing, only when I lost my family and friends. And that idea that, housing is essential. Everyone needs a place to live. But if you have a rupture between your social support system and you, it creates such a harder chance to try to get back on your feet, emotionally, psychologically, socially, physical health, resources. And so long story short, Steve, 5.5 years ago at Christmas time, I just took a walk down Market Street in San Francisco. I went up to every person who I saw who was homeless and just said, hey, do you have any family or friends you'd like to reconnect with? And the first person I met was a man named Jeffrey. He said he hadn't seen his family in 22 years. On the spot, just pull out my phone, said, would you like to record a video to your family? Did that. I went home that night, found a Facebook group connected to Jeffrey's hometown. Posted the video there with a little note. Within 1 hour, that video was shared over 100 times. Made the local news that night. And classmates started commenting saying, hey, I went to high school with Jeffrey. I work in construction. Does he need a job? I work at the congressman's office. Does he need health care? And in the first 20 minutes of the post, his sister got tagged. We got on the phone the next day, and she told me that Jeffrey had been a missing person for 12 years. So that prompted me to stop doing the work in, ed tech and say, I got to commit my life to do this full time, because Jeffrey's not the only one, and that this shouldn't be happening. We shouldn't have people that visible in front of the Old Navy flagship store a few days before Christmas, downtown San Francisco, that disconnected from networks and resources that could help them. And so, yeah, 300 and something odd reunions later and a lot of reconnections, that's Miracle Message's origin.
Boy, there's so much more I want to get to, but first, just for viewers, I mean, at this time during the pandemic, I think there's a sense of, by many, especially where we didn't lose our jobs, and we don't have COVID-19, and we're not a healthcare worker working crazy hours, of wanting to be in service, and to do more, to stretch.
Yeah.
What would you share? And as you mentioned, of course, our faith is deeply embedded here in this. What would you share to people that are thinking maybe I could do more, and they're not really sure how they might get involved, or how they might sort of juggle that in with other things that they're doing? What advice or might you give here, Kevin?
It's a really powerful and important question, because it's a reflection of the disconnect between what the world says and what is being said inside of each of us. The world, before pandemic, during pandemic, and after pandemic, says this is working. This is the way it's meant to be. This is status quo, right? And as it relates to homelessness, there's always been homelessness. There always will be homelessness. You're helpless. These people are bums. They're lazy. They're crazy. They're addicts. They're rejects. It's the American dream shattered. It's individual responsibility. You did something wrong. You are to blame. And even in other countries and cultures, that is not the case, right? The shame of homelessness isn't placed necessarily on the individual. It's placed on the collective, the group. Like, oh my gosh, what did we go wrong, right? But it's not to redirect shame. That's not the goal here. I think the world, if it's saying this is the way it should be, all of us as people, we have that still small voice inside of us. When we walk by a person panhandling, when we see another RV parked on our street, when we drive by the battered women's shelter, and we see, people who've been through so much, and we ask, does it have to be this way? And is there anything I can do about it? And I, for one, am not content to listen to what the world says. I think we have an obligation when you hear that to listen to it and follow it. And so, tangibly, there's a lot people can do around Miracle Messages. Every Wednesday night, we have what we call a case-solving community that is a network of volunteers all across the country, go online and basically do digital stalking for good. I mean, stalking is not the right word, but, digital search for good, like make phone calls, write letters to try to deliver these messages from people experiencing homelessness to their loved ones, and from families looking for their missing homeless relatives and trying to locate and connect the dots in different cities. So we have that's digital detective role as a volunteer. We've had over 100 million views on our videos. And really, it's not just a vanity metric, it's changing the stigma around homelessness. So being able to share content in our stories. We just launched a program in the Bay Area called Miracle Friends, which is a virtual buddy system. And we're connecting during this pandemic, people who are experiencing homelessness being moved into hotels with volunteers for phone calls, text messages, check-in, companionship, social support, the kinds of things we all need, especially in a pandemic, right? So there's so much we can do. And fundamentally, the main thing, even if it's not Miracle Messages related, you can have a conversation with someone, just like you and I did, in Boulder. Just look someone in the eye, see them not as a problem to be solved, but as a person to be loved. And really say, well, this person doesn't see me as a house person. I shouldn't see them as a homeless person. Whose somebody is that? Is that someone's son? Is that someone's daughter? Is that someone's brother? And treating them like that, we know how to interact as people. It just comes out. So.
Oh, man. Kevin, you mentioned several programs. You've got your Wednesday night and your buddies program, various programs. Can they go to your website now to learn more about these programs? And what is your website?
D is right up on that, saying we need Kevin's website. And I say, sure, D. Website is miraclemessages.org, and everything is on that site. Miraclefriends.org will bring you to kind of the specific part around the virtual buddy system if you want to learn more about that. But it's all on miraclemessages.org and then on Facebook at Miracle Messages. So.
Yeah, wonderful. Let me just also bring in what you were talking about here generically at the beginning there, Kevin, as you were sharing. There's the world, and then there's what that still small voice, our soul's calling, which is so much at the basis of what you're doing and why I left Silicon Valley so many years ago to do what I'm doing. To the words I put around it are to align with the divine. So that's that soul's calling. What that small voice is to go with what it is that we're being called to. And in fact, Kevin, I don't know if I've mentioned this to you, but I'm writing a book now. I'm almost done. It's called Beyond the American Dream. And it's what we're talking about here now. It's my 40-year story of when I boarded a flight, a United flight from Virginia when I was 21 years old to go to California. And then the whole travel, through the incredible, American dream, where I got to do all of the, cool, what is considered cool stuff, to leaving all of it, to now doing the really cool stuff, where I'm aligned with the divine, the amazing team that you'll meet here, everybody, before the program's over. I'll introduce you to my partners, some of them that are here, where that's beyond the American dream, where it's truly fulfilling, where we really are rich, rich. And there's a financial prosperity component, but true wealth. That's what this book's about, because there still remains so much fascination with this mirage story of American dream and riches.
Yeah.
And as you know, you live in Silicon Valley still, Kevin, and I did. That's where I used to live. And it's a mirage, because as soon as you get to 20 million, well, it needs to be 40. And then once it's 40, it needs to be 80.
Yeah.
There's just we don't ever quench that thirst,
Can we riff off this for a second? Because I can't, we haven't, rehearsed this in advance. This is amazing. So a couple things, and we'll keep this on the down low within Humanities Team community. So no blast on this stuff, but I want to talk about some things I haven't even shared yet publicly, and won't be for a while. So I'm working on a book too. We got to talk more about these things. Yeah. The working title of the book is Homelessness: A Case Study of the Breakdown of the American Dream.
Yeah.
And literally, as we kind of compartmentalize them, like homelessness, from all the other wrongs in our society. Like, oh yeah, it's the individual thing, but maybe we're awakening around criminal justice system, right? Or around PTSD veterans, around immigration, around, racial injustice and systemic, oppression. Well, it turns out there's a lot of intersectionality between them. And the closer we can see how these broken systems interrelate, the more empathy and understanding we have that, hey, they're not that dissimilar from us, because we are victimized by these broken ways of being as well. So first, we gotta riff on the books here. The other thing, so this week, this is a fun one. So right before starting Miracle Messages, I had run an ed tech company, online fundraising platform for underserved schools, basically what it was. And even as a tech entrepreneur, I always kind of, have a little bit of imposter syndrome around that term, because it wasn't the tech that really drew me in. It was the impact, right? So I was like, I'm more of like a social entrepreneur working in tech rather than tech entrepreneur. But it's interesting because so that company kind of got acquired, sort of, and joined up with an investor of mine. He was starting a company, and he asked me to be the third co-founder. So we started that company. I was there for about 6 months, and learned a lot. He's one of the best bosses I've ever had, probably one of the only bosses I've ever had, since I'm usually my own boss. And I just really appreciated him. And it wasn't the perfect fit for where that company was going to go and where like my life was taking me. And, we could see that the skill sets weren't quite aligned with what we needed. And the work that became Miracle Messages started taking off. Like, we got all this media coverage, and he could see how much I was alive with that. And we, very amicably had a conversation and realized, like, he said, there's very few times in life you can find something that you're uniquely called to do, and if you find that, you got to do it. So, we kept good ties, the whole thing. So that company, this past week, got acquired in a stock sale for $150 million, right? I mean, and at one point, I was a third co-founder. I am third co-founder of it. At one point, the stock and all this that would have been worth millions easily, right? And Steve, I've been working nonprofit. A few years ago, I was down to my last $600 doing this work. I don't come from great wealth, but I was thinking about it for a second. I was like, if I had stayed there for years, had all this stock vested, all this, and I had all this money now, what would I actually be doing differently than I'm doing right now? Like, if money was not, and I actually couldn't, I was like, probably, maybe I'd have one extra room in the house that I'm looking to get, like, I don't think there would be that substantial difference. Like, certainly we'd have a lot more to worry about, losing it. But I just, and there's a tremendous privilege in being able to talk about this, because if you have a baseline level of needs met, like I do, and you have a safety network, you can have conversations like this. But I also am like, I am just so grateful for the journey that I've been put on, and that here's this crazy experience that I can now kind of cite as a good story that propelled me. And honestly, I wouldn't change a thing. I could not imagine being any more satisfied and fulfilled in the journey that I've taken. So yeah. Funny how that it all intersects, though.
That's a beautiful story. And Kevin, one day we're in Silicon Valley even together, and talking to technology executives. And honestly, where I were with some of the billionaires in Silicon Valley, I would feel like, I'm actually the one that's going to be talking from the true riches, and just offering some ideas, that they could take or not take. But that's kind of how I see it, and I'm quite sure that you see it the same way. That because we're eternal beings, we're on this this journey that's an eternal journey, and we're here on the earth for just that long, in the scheme of eternal life. And the question becomes then, now what are we going to do? The life is that long. What are we going to do while we're here? And to amass billions that's sitting in a bank somewhere where there's all of these challenges in the world is one thing we could do.
Yeah.
And another thing we could do is what you're doing, Kevin, or what I'm doing with my partners in humanities.
Yeah.
Where it's like, wow, at the end of this life, what's it going to feel like?
Right. Great question. And it reminds me, it's like the accumulation of wealth and resources, in part, maybe it's seen as freedom. And yet I feel, again, as long as there's a baseline met, I can feel more shackled to the competition, the comparison, that endless game of a little bit bigger, a little bit better. And I almost think it's as much to try to prove to ourselves that we're worthwhile, right? It's piling up the dollar bills or whatever to say, this is evidence of my intellect, my competence,
right,
my talent. I've done that before. I'll admit freely, I went undergrad, so I got into Berkeley off a letter of appeal. Had never heard of like Ivy League schools growing up, grew up public schools, K-12, didn't know what a liberal arts school was. Got into Berkeley off the appeal because I initially got rejected, just wrote them a letter, got it. Ended up deciding not to go. And I went to a very small liberal arts college, terrific education, Occidental College down in LA, where Obama went for a couple of years. And at the end of graduation, I had all these like awards and department honors. And I'll be honest, I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder because I was like, I had a great education, but I don't think I saw it that way. I just saw, I was like, oh my gosh, there's this wider world of like, alumni networks and prestige. And yeah, it's a great school. Everyone who knows it respects it, but it doesn't have the cachet of even Berkeley, where I could have gone. I had an acceptance letter. I didn't even apply to these other places. And so I ended up going to a place that has that cachet, in large part because I got in and I was like, I kind of want to show myself that I'm good enough to be there, right? So I was Cambridge University in the UK, getting my graduate degree. And once I got there, what was fascinating, Steve, is one of the first days, I mean, God works in great ways. This guy comes up and I meet him and he's like this, I'm a tall 6'2" guy. I'm generally pretty confident, like how I carry myself. He's like a 6'4", 6'5", blonde hair, blue eye, British guy with, like rosy colored cheeks. Like, I mean, he's this Adonis, British Adonis. And we start talking and I say like, he said something like, where do you go to college, or what's your college? Because there's 30 colleges within the Cambridge network. And I said, I go to St. Catherine's. And I picked St. Catherine's based on a one-sentence description on the website, because I hadn't heard of any of these places. I'm American, right? I was just like, it's a small, mid-sized, academically rigorous college that's known for being very friendly, good in sports, and a good, well-rounded place. It's like, perfect. It's for me. So then he kind of looks at me and immediately his chin just starts going up. Right? And he's just like, I was like, oh, where do you go? And he's like, Trinity. It's like, okay. And it turns out Trinity and St. John's and maybe one or two others are like it's like, where Isaac Newton went, Darwin, it's like C.S. Lewis. Like it's the pinnacle. It's the most wealthy, prestigious colleges. And I kind of paused for a second. I was like, here I am. I've made it to literally what I thought was the mountaintop, like Cambridge University, top 2 or 3 universities in the entire world. And here I am in this immediately deflated mode, feeling like the college I'm at isn't as good. And the friends who I had who went to like Trinity and St. John's compared to St. Cat's as like the prestige one, start talking to them and they're like, oh, well, then the question is, what drinking society are you in? And if you're not in the right drinking society or dinner club, you're not. And I said, this never ends. This literally never ends. And so I was just like, right then and there, I said, you know what? I'm here. The people I went to Livermore High School with are just as good, just as smart, just as capable as Occidental College or Cambridge University. The difference is the opportunities, some luck, and really a sense of entitlement, or in a positive sense, belonging, a sense that you deserve to be there like this, and that kind of air of like, this is where I'm meant to be. That was really the differentiator, not any kind of core skill or competence. So after that, I was like, I still fall into it, the comparison game. But after that, I was just like, it's not worth it.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a great story. I'll share too, because you won't, that one of your teachers at Cambridge was also Obama's teacher. Obama went to Cambridge.
At Occidental College.
Oh, at Occidental. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Said that, you were actually one of his favorite students, who was also, this was one of Obama's favorite teachers. So, a great story. So it really comes down to, at some point, we've got to just kind of decide we're going to flick off that style of life of comparison. Because there's just, if you're,
how do you do it? How do you do it?
There.
How do you flick that off?
Well, oh gosh, I feel like I can't imagine doing anything that was more rewarding for me than what I'm doing. As I mentioned when we did the introduction, we're a 17-year-old nonprofit, and this pandemic is this huge pause button, that we've collectively hit all over the world. And we see it in humanities team actually as a reset button, as the invitation.
Yes.
For it to be
reset. I've been calling it the great recalibration.
Yeah.
I've been referring to it. Reset.
Exactly.
Great reset too.
You know, with your work, with our work, I mean, where we're with Ultimate Reality, where we can see that this whole, where we're, you know, where we were just in alternate realities, idols, you know, of just money, and power, and fame, and fortune, all these things that don't mean anything.
Right.
And of course, the poor Earth is, not to mention over half of humanity that just isn't suffering, you know, where we're in this material race. So now we've all been given this extra time in sequester to sit, to go within, to ponder, to consider, to reflect, and to really, you know, get our lives aligned back with what is meaningful to us, with our deeply held values, with the Creator, you know, with God, with the divine. So we've never worked harder. We're stretched in humanities team, but stretched in a good way, because there's this opportunity now, you know, to really to make this a reset and not just a pause.
That's right.
Yeah. So I feel blessed. You know, working with these partners, we're all incredibly passionate. We're very devoted to this work we're doing. Kevin, we get to work with people like you. Let me come back to your nonprofit. And we could just kind of go a little deeper with people in the streets and things. You know, are there things that you'd bring in with the pandemic that, as you kind of give more color to the story in ways that you're helping with these different? You've now got the Wednesday evening program that's doing the detective work, which sounds pretty cool. The Buddies program, where actually it sounds like you're pairing people one-on-one to support each other. Are there things that you want to talk about as we go a little deeper here?
I mean, there's a woman who reached out a few weeks ago named Deborah, who was looking for her son. Can you imagine not knowing where your son or daughter is, and there's a global pandemic, and you know that they're probably on the streets? I can't. I mean, I shudder to think.
It's scary. I mean, it's scary anytime with a pandemic.
It's scary anytime, but in a pandemic, terrifying. It's
real scary.
And just to give you a sense how beautiful like this turned out, she reaches out, says, "I haven't seen my son in a long time. I'm worried about him. I think he might be somewhere around Denver or Boulder."
Wow.
And I said, "Okay, well, let's see what we can do. I have some friends in Denver and Boulder." Send an email to actually the person who's co-authoring the book with me, Don Burns, who's a longtime faculty member at University of Denver, and just a great guy and an expert, an academic in homelessness and poverty. Don, this woman reaches out looking for her son. Anything we could do, and you know, any leads? How can we do? He takes the information, sends it out to a few people in his network, a couple nonprofits, organizations. They say, "I recognize that guy. I've seen him before. He's been here. He comes every so often." A few days later, they say, "He's here." They get in touch. Deborah and her son have their first phone call in however many years on Mother's Day, just a few weeks ago. And they're now back in contact. And I mean, for me, like, again, it took me 5 minutes. Like, I don't even remember like the kid's name, right? Like, or his age, right? I mean, literally it was like almost a pass through, but just that to me, that's what we're capable of, right? Like, it's nothing magical I did. I forwarded an email with a little bit of like a question. So, you know, I think during this pandemic, you know, what can we do and how can we show up? I think the closer we can get to being, I think God works in relationships, and the closer we can get to being in relationships with people who are suffering in all different forms. And I mean, we're all suffering to some degree right now. Our lives have been upended, but there's a difference between, you know, a direct life or death threat to yourself or your loved ones, versus inconvenience, you know, change. And there's a huge spectrum. You know, losing your job may not be immediately life or death, but it could be incredibly terrifying. How do you pay for basic necessities? So there's so much suffering right now. And to your earlier point, Steve, like, I think this is the moment that we can really step into our shared suffering and our shared trauma, our collective trauma. Because by doing that and stepping off our perches and the kind of us versus them plateaus that we usually live on, and just really recognizing our shared vulnerability and oneness, you know, that to me will lead to this, you know, and I don't even want to make it all abstract, like this awakening of the world or anything. It leads to Deborah reconnecting to her son. You know, it leads to us just being able to tangibly show up for each other in ways that we've always been capable of, but we're just blinded to before. We're just not aware of before. So for me, that's the opportunity in this pandemic as it relates to homelessness, is to form relationships where they normally wouldn't exist. And that's why a program like Miracle Friends, the virtual buddy system, is for us so important. So,
yeah, beautiful. I'm going to ask you about your Wednesday night program, but let me just share. But before I made my break and sold all of my interests in Silicon Valley, one of the things I experienced was cognitive dissonance, where, you know, it was like there was something that just it was like an incessant tap on the shoulder, you know, of pay attention, you know, feel into this, don't just be looking over here, there are all these important things over there. So this cognitive dissonance, and then once I'll use the term aligned with the divine and just surrendered in to, okay, I'm gonna pay attention to what's important here. I'm gonna go to my deeply held values. I'm gonna align with the one. We're using this term oneness, and in humanities team, we what that means is that we're all an emanation of one thing. It's actually scientists increasingly are affirming this, right? That we're all, even the earth, you know, it's not just humanity. Everything is an emanation of the one, right? And so so there's where we align with that, then these things that Kevin's doing, where, you know, you call them our brothers and sisters on the street. I mean, it's not just some cool name. They are, in fact, our brothers and sisters on the street. We're connected. And where we put ourselves in service to this thing that we're being called to, and we're all called to different stations in life, you know. For some, it's the environment and climate change, and others, it's homelessness. But just to pay attention to what is that we're being called to. What is that station we're being called to? And so we can clear out that cognitive dissonance and not have that incessant, you know, tapping on the shoulder that goes on, and instead go do what we're supposed to be doing here, you know, in this embodiment. So Kevin, you know, I'm thinking most of our viewers probably aren't in San Francisco, so the Buddies program, they wouldn't necessarily be able to do, but that Wednesday evening program sounded really fun. And so how would can you take us through how that program works? Because
so actually, one of the beautiful things about our program is everything can be done entirely virtually. So, you know, even the Buddies program, we have buddies, you know, unhoused friends in San Francisco and San Mateo County and Santa Cruz who have now been matched to volunteers in New York, Florida, all over. As long as you have a phone and you're willing to make phone calls and text messages to a person who's experiencing homelessness once, twice, or 3 times a week, you can participate. The case-solving community, you know, we have people record messages on the ground, maybe caseworkers, social workers, from clients, from people who are homeless. They can also reach us directly. We have a hotline. The phone number is 1-800-MISS-YOU, MISSYOU. But however that message comes into our system, then it gets shared with a network of volunteer digital detectives all across the country that then make phone calls, write letters, do internet searches. So wherever you're based, you know, whether you're in the Bay Area or not, it really doesn't matter. You could volunteer with Miracle Messages, go to our website, fill out the Get Involved form, and we can get you plugged in. You know, the hard part that does require the in-person piece has been the recording of messages. And what's challenging about that, Steve, is we've worked with a lot of partner organizations to try to get partners to administer what we call our reunification conversation or a reunion question. Do you have any family or friends you'd like to reconnect with, even if you don't know how to reach them? Very, on the surface, simple question. The challenge that we found is, in order to have that conversation and do so in an open way, you have to have a lot of trust and a lot of respect and a lot of compassion. And imagining a service provider working hard, under-resourced, overwhelmed, especially now, got a million things going on, got, however many clients that they're serving. Very hard to really just be present to one other person. Just look them in the eye and say, do you have any loved ones you'd like to reconnect with? And then to really be present to whatever they have to say as a response and listen to it and think about it. So though a provider, a partner organization is on the surface in the best position to offer a service like ours to their clients, in practice, sometimes volunteers are even better equipped. Someone who says, the one thing I'm going to do is next time I see a person who's experiencing homelessness, maybe I'll buy them lunch, I'll give them a few bucks. I don't even have to give them anything other than my time and my attention. I'll just look them in the eye and say, hey, I volunteer with this organization called Miracle Messages. We've reunited about 300 and something odd people with their loved ones. Is there anyone that you'd like to reconnect with, that you've lost touch with? I'd love to learn more and be there if I can help. Anytime that people have that conversation and it's done with this kind of openness, pure heart, not an agenda, like I'm trying to get you out of here, this is just an excuse to say, go move away, but truly like, tell me about it. It has great results. And of course, I'll just say, not every family wants to reconnect. Not everyone has family that they want to reconnect with. Sometimes family is part of the problem, not part of the solution, right? There's cases of domestic violence, LGBTQ youth, where the hostile home environment. Like there's situations in which it's not just this, one-stop shop silver bullet to end homelessness. But what we say is everyone is someone's somebody. Everyone is someone's mom or dad, brother, sister, or someone's best friend, classmate, coach, mentor, fellow veteran. Who's your somebody? And if you have nobody, if you truly are all alone, you burned all your bridges, no one wants to connect with you, no one's been supportive, well, maybe we can just be good neighbors to each other. And that's really where, Miracle Messages with reunions and social supports, virtual buddy system comes into place.
Yeah, fantastic. So there's a question here from a guy named David in the window, which I'm gonna pose the question to you here, Kevin. But let me invite people at this point to, these are community calls. So I want to invite you to come in. If you're in one of the master classes and have something you want to share, please do. There's a put your hand up feature. So Tim, maybe you can help me with that. If somebody has their hand up, we can bring them in. Also, you can, in the chat, just pose your question or your comment, things that you want to bring in, including if there are things just relating to the pandemic, challenges that you have, things that you want to talk about during this call. This is the part of the call where we're inviting people to
great
messages you want to share.
The more off the wall question, the better. I like any and all weird questions. So bring them in.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a live program, of course. So
yeah.
So come in, put your hand up if you want to come in that way. If you do come in with your hand up, I just invite you to, if you can make it, in a minute or less. That way it gives us time to cycle through as many comments and questions as viewers have.
So you speak shorter than I've spoken during this session, right?
Well, you're the special guest here, Kevin. So
we're all special guests, right?
We're wanting to hear your story. It's wonderful with us.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you, Kevin. This David wants to know, says, are you scaling the programs to other states and other countries?
Oh, yeah, great question. We are. So, gosh, I'm just breaking all my news here with you. Yes, Steve. We actually had a documentary that was made about us for the French TV equivalent of 60 Minutes. And it's been it's a 30-minute documentary. It's going to be airing on, you know, primetime TV. It was supposed to go a couple months ago, but, you know, this little pandemic thing. So when that airs, we're expecting our work in France to really pick up. We've had inquiries from Australia, the UK, Canada, Mexico, you know, Middle East, people all over wanting to get involved. And then, you know, we also have delivered messages all around the world. So we had one man, Jose Ruiz, who had been sold into slavery at the age of, I think he was 8. His uncle, and he took him and his brothers and sisters to a farm in Mexico in the mountainous regions, and he had to work for years. He escaped, ended up in Corpus Christi, Texas, recorded a message to his brothers and sisters, hadn't seen in 30 years. And all he said is, here's the last name, here's their first names, here's the name of the farm I grew up on in this like small, dusty, remote, mountainous part of Zacatecas, Mexico. And we put it out there on social media, and within a day or so, a Univision reporter got tagged in the post, drove 6 hours into the mountains, started asking around in this little town, do you know this family? Do you know them? Found the farm, went to the farm. They were all still there, like the brothers and sisters. And they've been like, we've been looking for him for like 30 years. So, you know, we've worked in Mexico, crazy stories in Cuba, delivered messages, a village in Kenya. So really all around the world. But, you know, our core operations have been Bay Area, so a lot of the activities there, but we're not geographically specific or, you know, isolated. It really could be a global program, as much as any of your viewers and folks want to take the reins and get involved locally.
Yeah, fantastic. So be sure to go to the miraclemessages.org site. Reach out to Kevin. I'm sure there are viewers that probably were guided to be here today to meet you, Kevin, and that will want to come to your site and get connected to the amazing work you're doing. So Martha wants to know, is there a way to listen to this program again? So Martha, yes. One is we have created a spot on our Humanities Team website. I think under Community Circle, where you're going to be able to go down and click on a link, and then it'll have these Friday calls. We were going to try and get that in place here this week, so hopefully that's in place. As well, on the Facebook page, our Humanities Team Worldwide Facebook page, we're actually broadcasting live to that page now. So you could go to the page, friend it if you haven't already done so, and you can watch it there. And then I think we send out a link here as well with with the announcement on Monday. I think there might be a link to come back and to replay. So there are several different ways to listen to these programs again. And it looks like in the window Dee Meyer just placed a link that you can just copy that link now as well. And that's another way that you can listen again. So now, and Tim, let us know if there's a hand up, and we can bring people in. So, Kevin, what as you're looking here out at the balance of 2020 and into 2021, you mentioned this thing that's happening in France, which was incredibly exciting, giving the visibility on television to people all over France. What are other kinds of strategic things you're doing to raise your visibility so more people can get involved?
You know, we're going to be sharing the story on Miracle Friends over the next few weeks. So look out for that. That will be exciting on the virtual buddy system. You know, there's a lot of places that are moving, people experiencing homelessness, moving into hotels right now during the pandemic. And so this program could be applied elsewhere. We're talking to other cities, had a call with Philadelphia, had, you know, calls with talking with Florida, not the state of Florida. I don't get on the phone and say, hey, Florida, how are you doing? But, you know, people in these different communities. You know, what else? You know, really, as you know, like finding ways so that it's not a one-off, right? Like, it's great. We're in this, you know, this moment of collective reckoning, So let's create all these programs and connect, and oh, how beautiful, what a, you know, great story. And then it goes away. That's no, because we're going to still be here, right? It's going to be a different world, and we can help make it different. And so, you know, what we're really thinking is, okay, great. Let's demonstrate how valuable this is and what's possible. Show the way of what could be and what we're doing now, and then find ways to extend it. You know, integration, embedding the program, sustaining it, and finding, you know, revenue contracts with cities, counties, local government regions, so that this program is not just a one-off. So, you know, that's some of the work that we're doing now. It's the sustaining and the scaling of what we've learned during this pandemic.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, here's a question from Maharaj. He says, in Sri Lanka, many kids were given for adoption to Europeans to die to poverty. Now these kids have grown up. They make solo visits back to their homeland, but only with faint memories. How can they better search for their families, in this case, where they came from, Sri Lanka?
Yeah.
In question, where they're, you know, how can they become a detective themselves to kind of go back and find?
So I'm not an expert on that. I would say we have a lot of inquiries around adoption cases, and it's a little bit different than what we do. But what we have done before is we have a network of you know, private investigators, and some of them have been willing to take on cases as kind of their own private practice that have come through our system to work on adoption ones. So if you know, you had a particular case in mind, feel free to reach out, and I could always see if one of our private investigators would be interested in taking it on. It is different than Miracle Messages. It would be your arrangement that you'd have to work out with them. But in general, you know, what we found is, you know, finding the town or the city, getting as much information as you can, thinking of what information you'd want to put on a missing person flyer, right? And in the case, the missing person is the mom, the birth mom, or the birth father, whoever, the birth family. So all the information you can collect, and then what are the networks in which that person or people may have been embedded? So what are the, you know, the local contacts, or were they part of where did they work? What were the sport teams that they were, you know, participated in? Who was their coach? Where did they go to school? And then, of course, at some level in the U.S., where I'm, you know, a bit more familiar, there's a difference between open and closed adoptions on whether the records are publicly available, at what point, if you're 18 or older versus under. So it's probably worthwhile to figure out who manages some of the adoption records. Usually it's done, I think, county by county, like a county registrar's office in the US. But yeah, I mean, asking around at both an institutional level and kind of a person-to-person level is a lot of the work that we do. And then, of course, you know, digital searches, trying to find the name. White pages is a great search. People, PIPL, is a great search. Ancestry, LexisNexis, you know, there's quite a few. So again, you know, feel free to reach out if you have a specific, but that's what I usually share.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. So hopefully Maharaj will reach out to you here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So here's a brother ED. He says, as a recovering nerd, TIGE and IBM. I'm a former IBMer myself here.
Recovering.
Who was homeless briefly and now guides the dying. I grok the grace and wisdom of y'all's heart-centered services to humanity. Hey, Kevin, you want to?
Thanks, brother ED. Yeah, well, recovery nerd. I mean, can you ever fully recover from that? Like lifelong, man. Own it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
Hey, nice. Yeah, thanks for bringing that in, brother ED. So
yeah, I appreciate that. And one thing I'll just say on that is, like, one of the most affirming things. Like, I felt like an imposter when I started this work, Steve. I didn't know. Not only did I not know anyone I considered homeless, because I knew my uncle, but I didn't know him as a homeless man. Just, you know, he'd come to our Christmas and Thanksgiving dinner. We had a great time. And then my dad would drop him back off at the Greyhound station, and he'd go back to Santa Cruz, usually a halfway house. And then he'd do something disruptive, or he'd get off his meds, or, you know, his schizophrenia would flare up and he'd disappear for 6 months, you know, and then he'd call, and I'd get this call, collect, answer it. Hey, how are you doing, Kevin? Can you put your dad on the line? Like, how are you? You know, how's school? So when I started this work, I was like, I don't know any homeless people. And in fact, I don't even feel like I have credibility on this issue, because I'm going to be honest here. I don't even care that much about homelessness compared to, say, education or the environment or social justice. And what I realized is it's not homelessness that I care about. It still isn't. It's the intrinsic value of every single person and the interconnectedness of us all. And it just so happens that here's this issue around homelessness, where because they don't have a physical housing, stable, secure housing, this entire swath of people are seen as less than, untouchable, you know, failures, shamed, losers. And that to me is BS. You know, for me, homelessness, yeah, I care about it now more than I did before, but for me, it's really the value of the human individual there. And so when I hear from folks like Brother there, it's really affirming, you know, because I think our work taps into something collective that even if I haven't had that experience of homelessness, as it sounds like you've, you know, been able to weather, that there's a shared understanding of what we can do together. So I thank you for affirming that.
Yeah, me too. So, and Maharish wants to know how to get in touch with you. I think just go to the website, right?
Yeah,
miraclemessages.org. Kevin will get your
get
message.
Involved. Yeah, we're a small operation. We got 2 people full-time. We got a couple part-time people. You know, you're not going to be lost in the bureaucracy of Miracle Messages. Just fill out the get involved form, and then we can be in touch from there.
Yeah, let me come back here too to one of the key things we're covering. We've kind of discussed it over and over. You were just sharing that, you know, it's not really homelessness per se. It's the deeper thing that's going on. Which is that's this word oneness, you know, which Humanities Team, when we were birthed 17 years ago, the notion of oneness is that the divine and life are actually 2 sides of one coin, right? That which then means something that's very profound, which is that the divine actually is in every homeless person, in the earth herself, you know, in animal life, in plant life, in all of life. Which means life is incredibly sacred, right? And of course, in the American dream world, where we're just on that rat race, that's not our worldview. We're so busy out with checklists and with the material interests that we just kind of lose sight of what is right under our nose, you know, literally, which is the divine that's in that homeless brother and sister on the street, you know, and the earth that's suffering because of the way we treat the earth.
Yeah.
So it's why I think Kevin also deeply resonates with oneness. We had a great conversation about that when he was out at my home. It's why we, in the early days, really the way we were always talking about Humanities Team was just awakening oneness and then living in alignment with oneness. Now we try and frame it in a way that I think maybe reaches people easier, where we talk about supporting people on their conscious journey, planetary awakening, which is to oneness, and then creating flourishing. And the way we're creating flourishing is by talking about the kinds of things that we're talking about here. Who are we really? You know, who are we? Who are other people? And who is the earth? Is there's a soul here and everything. There's the divine itself here and everything. And then we naturally come into service. We're called to a particular station, you know, Kevin to his station, me to my station, each of you to your station. And the reason I'm coming back and covering this is, if this is going to be a reset button, you know, and not just a pause button, because pause means that you stop and then you restart and go in the same direction, right? And I believe, and those of us in Humanities Team believe, that it was, you know, there's no value in just pause and going back in that very same direction. The invitation here is for us to reset for each of us. We have to do this individually. There's no We're not going to follow guru figures, and there's no leader on high that's going to take us there.
Yeah.
It's for us each to go within and to get in touch with our own calling, our own sense of ultimate reality, our own station in life that we're to go to with real intrinsic value that's going to create, this true wealth. So that's our invitation here to all of you. And we're actually just winding down. We only have a couple more minutes. So let me just, Kevin, I want to thank you so much for joining us. It's always a total privilege and pleasure to be with you, brother. I want to thank all of you viewers for being here. And I want to mention a few things. During the pandemic, we've doubled our scholarships, our partial scholarships, our full scholarships. If you still have a job, don't apply for these, because we want to try and direct the half and full scholarships to people that really need it. There are a lot of people that have lost their jobs, have lost their income source, trying to get these programs to those people. So be aware of that. You can reach out to us in the humanities team if you're interested in a scholarship. As well, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. So many of you want to donate to these scholarships. You can go to the humanities team website and you'll see the donate button, and you can donate to the scholarships. You just enter in the comments that your donation you'd like to be directed to these scholarships. Also on the humanities team website, under programs, educational programs, you'll see you can pull down there. We have a whole bunch of free programs in healing the past and conscious leadership, science and self-empowerment. You can check those out. These are powerful programs that you can get a lot out of. And then lastly, as a nonprofit, Amazon's got this really cool thing called Amazon Smile. So you can just create a humanities team. Actually, also Miracle Messages. Either of our organizations, you can, in the pull down for Amazon Smile, you can direct, I think it's 0.5% now of your purchases to go to your favorite nonprofit. So invite you to feel into that. And if Miracle Messages or humanities team interests you, you could direct that wherever you purchase from Amazon, 0.5% goes to our nonprofits. So with that, I want to just thank everybody. I want to also bring my partners on as we close. I want to introduce the partners that make this program possible. There he is, Tim Noah. Tim does these programs every other week. Steve Meyer, who manages the operations for Humanities. Karen Gordon, who manages the communications. And Garth Catterall, he comes in from heaven, as you'll see here in his picture when he comes on screen. He manages the IT. So these are the people that make it real easy for Kevin and I. We just sit here and yak. And there you are, Garth. Good to see you. So thank you all these are my partners. Huge shout out to you guys. Thanks for the incredible work you do. And all of the viewers. And Kevin, wow, I hope we get together soon here physically, and then we continue these virtual programs and can promote the incredible work you're doing. Thank you, brother.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, been awesome. And so namaste, everybody. Have a fabulous Memorial Day weekend. Thank you for being with us here on this Friday. Truly, what a wonderful hour it's been. Okay, talk soon, everybody. Take great care.
Take care. Thank you.